to world building. I originally intended this just for anime artists and cartoonists. They put for writers. So I'll be glad to talk to how many people here are writers as opposed to just anime, manga, cartoons, that kind of thing. Oh, great. Okay, I will cover some stuff about writers then. Sorry, do you need?
No, yeah.
Okay. My name is Karina Fabian. I am not an anime artist. I am a writer by trade. I brought just a couple of my books in case any of you might be interested. This one is Need a Life, Zombie Exterminator, The Zombie Apocalypse Meets Reality TV. And this one, Magic Mints and Mayhem, is the first in a very involved series, including novels, short stories, serial stories online, even a newsletter. And the reason that I especially show these two is because the world building played such an important role, not only in the original novels, but in giving me the fodder, as it were, in order to write more. And that's one of the things that I love best about world building, is that it can take you beyond your original story. So why would a cartoonist or an anime artist care about world building? World building will support your stories. They will help you to inform your characters, to give ideas about their background and that kind of thing. Whether you're doing a character sketch, a 4-panel cartoon, or full-blown manga, the world that you build is going to give you a good foundation and a framework in which to work your art. Now we're going to look at 3 or 4 areas of world building. In each of those, I'll give you just a brief introduction. We'll look at questions to consider, and then after we've looked at those areas, we'll talk about some sources for research. And then when we're done with that, as we have time, I'll address a few more things that are more writer-specific. One thing I'd like you to keep in mind as we go through all of these things is that your particular situation might not call for deep thinking on every aspect. Some things might be completely irrelevant to your particular cartoon. For example, if you're doing a 4-panel based on puns, then you're probably not going to need to do a lot of thinking about your world. If your manga takes place in the animal world of a neighborhood, human politics might not be of interest to you. However, if you're doing something full-blown, like Full Metal Alchemist, politics are going to be very important. So when you're doing your world building, keep in mind, what does my story need? So with that, let's start with geography. Obviously, your characters have got to live somewhere, whether it's in their living room or in a full-blown world with multiple countries interacting with each other. And geography does a lot more than just give you a way to get from point A to point B. A great example of this would be to compare how the geography of, say, Spirited Away by Miyazaki informs that story and changes the whole tone. Consider if that were put in the same kind of geography as Fritz Lang's Metropolis, which is very stark, very technological, kind of dark, whereas Spirited Away is more fanciful and more open, more country, that kind of thing. Okay? So, first thing to consider is, how big is your geography? Are you just talking about a neighborhood? Are you just talking about things that happen on the living room couch? Or are you looking at a city? Are you looking at a city, or are you looking at an entire nation? The bigger the area, the more diverse, and the more that you are going to need to research and to visualize and to work through that world, okay? Even within a small area, there is a lot of diversity. It's tempting to think, oh, well, mine is a city, so obviously there's going to be a lot of skyscrapers crowded together, and there will be a slum in this area, and, you know, there you go, that's it. But think about what a real city looks like. For example, we recently went for a weekend up to New York City, and we only saw 4 parts of the city, each just a few blocks in each part. One area was full of small shops, kind of the mom and pop thing, lots of street vendors, And if you turned a corner, you would come to where there were condos kind of recessed off of the street. Another section, Broadway, is full of big fancy shops and electric billboards, wide streets, lots of traffic, scaffolding everywhere, and a really incredibly huge cathedral. There's another area where there's just a plaza. It's a big cement plaza. It's just off Broadway, where there's nothing but a little terrace and people go to buy tickets. So you just have big crowds and kind of a big cement park, essentially. If you go to the coach to try and catch the ferry, then you're going to see very tall buildings, a large park, and this huge, long building full of windows where you actually go and get your tickets and things for the ferry. 4 small areas within just a mile or 2 of each other, but incredible diversity. So when you are thinking about your world, go beyond the city stereotype, for example, okay? All right. What is the lay of your land? A neighborhood in San Francisco with all of the steep hills and big drops is going to have a very different look and even a different way of feeling, and the way your characters are going to act. It's going to be a little bit different than, say, a neighborhood here in Layton. Oh goodness, I can't see it all. Okay. Think about mountain landscape. The mountains in Nevada are so high in elevation that they're very stark, very dry, very brown. Compare that to the mountains in West Virginia, which are at a lower elevation, but because of that, they're very lush and green. So a lot of people like to place their manga in Japan, kind of an obvious spot. Did you know Japan has 200 volcanoes? Only a few of which are actually active. And we were pretty lucky. We got to live in Misawa, Japan, up in the north for a couple of years. And there was one of the extinct volcanoes that turned into a park. It had a huge lake in the crater itself. And the whole area was what they call a deciduous rainforest. So there's lots of waterfalls, lush vegetation, a lot of ferns. And it's a very beautiful part of Japan. Go south to, say, Okinawa, and you're not going to see that same kind of landscape. You're going to see sugarcane, banana trees, mangoes. Mangoes, say that 3 times fast. And other tropical plants. Or think about how that rainforest mountain I just mentioned compares to Mount Fuji. Still in the same country and really not that many miles away. I think it's like 50 to 100 miles difference. But it's a very different mountain landscape. So when you are doing your geography, think about diversity. And think about the kind of things that your story might need as far as landscape, because that will help determine what you put into your world building. Let's move on to politics and culture. Great manga example for this is Full Metal Alchemist. It's really big, especially in politics, military, that kind of thing. So we're going to start with politics. What is your government like? Or on a smaller scale, who's in charge? Is it the guy with the mustache? Is it a nanny state where the government runs everything? Or is it a free market economy where people live and die by their ability to work and their ability to have others pay for their work? In addition to how this affects your story, it's going to affect the look of your world. Let's use nanny state for an example. If the government runs everything, they might settle into a comfortable groove. And you can see this perhaps in the buildings, because the government will have approved certain designs for the buildings, and they'll just keep those designs, and you'll keep making buildings according to that design. You might see more surveillance cameras, even just small on the side panel, a camera showing. Or you may have monitors that are doing government service messages. Maybe only government workers in your world will get the perks, like the cars and the good apartments and whatever. Now let's turn to religion. Do you have warrior monks? Does the majority religion value something in particular? Community, wealth, sacrifice. Is it monotheistic, or is there a pantheon, like with the ancient religions? How closely does God or the gods interact with your characters? Even when religion doesn't play a big part of your story, it might be seen in the background. For example, how many of you live in Utah? Okay, drive a few blocks in a suburb of Utah. What are you going to run into? A church, exactly. Why is that? Does anybody know? It's Utah, yes. It's because the Mormon faith values community, and they want you to worship within your neighborhood community. So they place churches so that it's easy access within small areas. Okay? Compare that to a Catholic church or a Baptist church or wherever, where you have 2 or 3 scattered throughout the city, and if the mass schedule doesn't suit us one day, we're perfectly fine to go across town to the other Catholic church, and it's not a big deal. Okay? Or since our nation is primarily Christian, think about a really dangerous area of the highway. What do you see when you drive by the highway?
Crosses. Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, crosses.
Crosses, yes. You'll see crosses. There's memorials for people who died on that highway. Little things like that might play just a small part, a little spice in your stories and your visuals. Okay? Okay, next. What is the culture like? Do the people value the elderly? Or is youth supreme? What do they consider success? Is it beauty? Is it intelligence? Is it wealth? Is it honor? What kind of things do they do for entertainment? Is it physical activities, team sports, or individual? Do they prefer computer games? Are they environmentally conscious? In addition to how this is going to define attitudes of your characters, it's also going to determine the kind of things that you'll see in the world. If elderly are devalued enough, you're probably not going to have a lot of older characters. But if you build a world where the elderly are highly valued, then you're going to want to have a lot of incidental characters, whether shopkeepers or big bosses, that are older in years. If physical strength and beauty are valued, then you're going to be more likely to have gyms, parks, pickup games in the neighborhood, and that kind of thing, as opposed to libraries, theaters, or people reading on their iPhone as they walk down the street. Now, these are just a few aspects of our world, the ones that I think are most important and most visually impacting for especially artists and cartoonists. Let's talk a little bit about what you can do to answer these questions that we brought up. First is find a parallel culture or find some other part of the world and use that as your basis. I'm betting a lot of you probably already do this kind of thing. Anybody? Ah, yep, couple. Okay, good. All right. When you're doing that, you read up on their history, read up on the legends, go to Google and look up pictures, get an idea of visually what it looked like. A lot of times you can find books about the everyday life. I remember in college we had one called The Everyday Life of People in Ancient Rome. So try and find some things like that to give you a good idea. That's a question.
Yeah, incidentally, I actually went to Poland this year, and I kind of have a world of which it is like a very much of a heavy Marxist society.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Poland is still recovering from that, because I was riding the trains, and even though some of the buses are nice, the trains are like decades out of date. And so I can actually experience not just the ricketiness, the archaicness of the doors and such, and so I can just, I don't really need to look it up. I've been there. So.
Right, that's wonderful. And if you can go to a place. Did everybody hear what he was saying? If you didn't, raise your hand. Okay, he has been to Poland, and he said that he could see the archaic older things that they're still trying to recover from their time under the communism, and you can especially see it in the trains, in how rickety they are and how hard it is, the doors opening and closing, and so he had a real feel
I
for
actually
that
got my
kind of culture.
hand stuck in the door because they were grabbing something and they just closed on me. And
Yeah, he had to stick his hand in the door to keep them
they're
from
not like
closing
the
on him.
German doors, like you close on them on the automatically open like the doors. Nope, I had to wait till the.
Oh, ouch. So you had to wait until somebody else opened the door.
I was
stuck on the door because there's no safety features. So little things like that. Do you have safety features? Or is that not as important as other things in your culture? Okay, so study the art, study the photographs, find out little things like that. Read some of the news from the area. And if you know somebody or can find somebody who actually visited, get them. Sit them down, have lunch, ask them questions, okay?
Maybe just YouTube it.
That's true. YouTube is great for that. Yeah. Okay, next, look at the architecture. Google Earth is a good place to start. If you can't Google an area, then if you don't have Google Earth, Google that area. Look for a famous landmark. Look for the civic authority, that kind of thing, the tourism area, and then start looking at images as well. It's okay to take ideas from other manga, but be sure that you make them your own. Now, there's a saying among writers that there are only 43 original ideas, or maybe it's only 15. Or if you do it this way, there's only 6 original ideas. The point being, there aren't a lot of truly original ideas out there. What there are original spins on time-honored ideas. So, take a look at what you've got and make it yours. Another way to do that is to take the 3 things I just mentioned, mix and match. Take a little bit of this culture from this geography, and I really like how this artist made this kind of spin in their world. I wonder if I can do something similar here. And then put it all together. It's like cooking. It's a big recipe. Okay? Everything that you do, though, think about the consequences. For example, you want to do a medieval society, but you want them to have modern weaponry. Then you need to think seriously about how the modern weaponry is going to change how they fight. Because somebody with a really accurate gun is not going to get close enough to get chopped up by a sword. Just makes logical sense. And if you don't have some kind of a sword that will actually deflect bullets, or some kind of special food that makes them go really fast, your samurai are probably going to bite it. Okay. Likewise, if you've got a lot of nice modern artillery, are you really going to have people on the same army armed with bows and arrows? Okay, so think about how you're going to mix that stuff, if you need to put in a justification or whatever. Okay? The next thing to do, I'll get you in just a second. The next thing that you can do is start with a character. And think about that character. Get in their head. Imagine what they have seen, what their background is, how they grew up, where they went to school, how did they walk to school, what did they see. Use those kind of things as the seeds for your world. You can do the same thing with your plot. What kind of things do I know in my plot that I need to have happen? How will my world support that? And then use that as your foundation. And then from there, you can start looking for more ideas, doing research. I know as a writer, I tend to write along in my story, and if I come across a portion of a world that I'm not sure about yet, I leave myself a nice big blank, and I just say, okay, how does this look? And then I continue on. So I would guess as an artist, as you're kind of just sketching and mapping things out, you could put notes in your margins, that sort of thing. Remember, above all, your world needs to support your story, and your story influences your world. It's a dynamic relationship where one can feed the other. So take some time with it, enjoy it. World building really is a lot of fun.